Hey nature photographers, it is Lee Hoy, your generally friendly OM System and Photo Pro ambassador, and I am coming to you from Curitiba, Brazil. And I have a topic today for wildlife macro photographers in particular, where I want you to understand that not all autofocus target modes are created the same, okay? I know a lot of photographers who are always looking for a one-stop solution. They want one answer that works for everything. But that just isn't the case for wildlife photography. So we'll be right back, and I'm going to teach you which autofocus target modes I like to use. Hello, my name is Lee Hoy, and welcome to my YouTube channel, Lee Hoy Photography. I'm an OM System ambassador, senior workshop instructor for Wildside Nature Tours. I'm a workshop instructor for Precision Camera and Video, and a contributing author for the Journal of Wildlife Photography. All right, before we jump into today's topic, I would like to share with you, I've got some new workshops on the website listed. I'm going to be adding a Brazil OM System only, where it'll be the northern and southern Pantanal. I'm going to be doing some more OM System only workshops, like probably a beginning bird photography. I'll be looking at quite a few different topics that are very skill specific to help you advance in your ability to capture visually compelling images. So if you haven't been out to the website, hop out there. Also, I started my own newsletter. If you haven't subscribed, you can do so at my website at leehoyphotography.com, and that will help keep you abreast of my newest YouTube videos, my workshops, my private education opportunities. I'd really appreciate it if you'd hop out there and do that for me. So let's hop into the camera. I have an OM1 Mark II connected to my 150-400 that is my primary wildlife setup, okay? Even with the 50-200 that I don't think's arrived at my house yet, this is still gonna be my primary wildlife setup. But I know I get questions a lot, like, okay, what autofocus target mode should I use? And I say, well, what are you doing? It depends. But there are some that I tend to use the most, and I'm going to walk you through the various target mode settings and which ones I think are ideal. So on the OM1 Mark II, under the green autofocus menu tab on page 6, now on the OM1, I believe it's page 5, is the autofocus target mode settings. And we're going to hop in there because I have some of them disabled. You wouldn't see them if I went through the super control panel or something like that. So we're going to start with all. Now, personally, on the OM1, I used all for the majority of AI subject detection autofocus, whether it be birds or mammals. I liked all. Now, on the OM1 Mark II, the engineers at OM Systems say we shouldn't use all with subject detection. I will show you how I got around that and still using most autofocus points. The reason being, I want the autofocus target that is closest to the eye to be the one that goes first. If I have a smaller box and it's not near the subject's eye, it's going to start with that smaller box and then work its way out, which is going to create some lag. So I want a larger box. So on the OM1, my normal autofocus target mode was all. Now, there are situations where that doesn't work as well, and we'll talk about those as we come to the autofocus points that I use. Now, the next one you see down in the list is single. Let me tell you, that is too small for wildlife or bird, any kind of animal like that. It's too small. You got to understand, these boxes are looking for contrast, and if you get too small, if the color's uniform or there's no edges, there's not going to be any contrast. The only instance where I may occasionally use single would be some macro photography when I have a very small subject. That's the only time I use single. Now, one thing you'll notice in this checklist, small does not show up. You cannot turn off or disable the small autofocus box. So single is smaller than small. And small is what I use second most for wildlife photography. The reason being, and the instances in which I use it are a subject that's in grass or, maybe a bird in branches, where I'm going to then move using the joystick. I'm going to move that small box near its head, and most of the time I'm still going to use AI subject detection, but I'm giving the camera some help, some assistance. I'm letting it know, start working right here, and I'm going to move that box where I want the subject in the frame. Now, if it's a subject that's moving around a lot, I'm going to put it roughly where I want it in the frame and go for the best, okay? So this small, not single autofocus point is my go-to point when I have a subject perhaps in a grassy area like a tiger in tall grass in India, maybe a jaguar peeking out of the reeds, you know, looking for a caiman. I'll throw up some images as we go through this video of what the illustrations I'm showing you. So my primary one is going to be a bigger box that we'll see in a minute. My secondary one is the small, not the single. The single is too small to pick up much contrast, except on the tiniest subjects. Now, the next autofocus target mode is cross. I never use that. I don't need it. It's too big for most things or too small for most things for what I want to use it for. Back in my DSLR days, I used cross a lot more. That is no longer the case. I haven't used it. Mid is not something I'm going to use ever except for starry sky autofocus. Mid and large. Those are the two uses for mid and large. Starry sky autofocus. Other than that, they don't come into play for wildlife photography. But I created C1, which is a longer, thinner rectangle than the large. That I use quite a bit for macro. That's my go-to macro for horizontal macro shots. Whereas this C2 box is more of my go-to for my macro vertical shots. So a larger subject where I'm going to use AI subject detection, okay? If I'm not using AI subject detection, I'm probably switching to the small box and going to move it to the head of the subject. Now, quite a bit in macro, I will use focus peaking, which is manual focus, okay? And I'll use the focus peaking indicator to let me know what's in focus. But when I'm using autofocus, which on the 90mm macro is pretty daggum accurate, C1 and C2 are my custom, they're autofocus mode, target modes I created. Okay, now C3, here is my normal AI subject detection box, especially for birds. Mammal subject detection is really good on, you know, a lot of mammals, particularly dogs, cats, you know, bears, things like that. Bison, hippo, it's going to struggle a lot more because there's not as much contrast. The head shapes are very different. And I will often find myself switching to the small box and putting it near the eye of the subject and letting AI subject detection work. And if AI subject detection is struggling, I have a button, the exposure compensation button is programmed. I can turn it on and off quickly. So combined with these boxes, I use the FN lever to switch between this C3 box and my small box. That's how I use the FN lever. The plus minus button is then programmed for exposure compensation. So C4 is just a little box. I don't use it for anything. It's just one I probably created in a class. I do have different autofocus target modes for landscape, and this is mainly about wildlife and macro photography. So not all autofocus target modes are created equally. I tend to use a few and never touch the others. So if you're curious about how to create a custom target mode, I have a YouTube video. I'll put the link up here that talks about that. I hope today's video helps. I hope you're out there capturing some visually compelling images. Would love to have you join me on a workshop or one of my mentorship programs. Thank you all. Y'all have a good day.